Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a digital codex and rulebook for a truly fascinating tabletop role-playing game. It's called Wisdom the Blood Price.
Yeah, by Luminosity E and Matthew Kowalski.
Right. And for this dive, we actually have a very specific mission sent in by you, the listener. We are going to perform a hyper-quick character build using these rules, and then we're going to immediately plunge that fresh character into a simulated gameplay crucible to see how this game's like brutal moral engine actually operates.
I love this mission because the premise of this game immediately sets it apart from traditional tabletop experiences. Like when you think of a standard RPG, the focus is almost always on acquisition.
Yeah, getting stuff.
Exactly. Acquiring gold, acquiring magical loot, acquiring experience points by just defeating monsters. But Wisdom the Blood Price explicitly states its thesis right on the title page.
Oh, the quote.
Yeah, it says, between the lightning and the dark, wisdom bleeds. And I mean, it is a game entirely about consequence, where power without insight is treated as a wound that bleeds forward in time.
It's so intense. And before we even touch the mechanics, I have to mention the aesthetic of the source material you're looking at.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
The PDF doesn't look like a standard, cleanly formatted reference manual. The creators describe it as a living scroll of ceaseless prayer, which is just wild.
It really is.
It's styled as this like void black vellum written in bone ink, and it's accented with gold leaf. It has these intricate angelical glyphs and Kabbalistic maps woven directly into the margins. It honestly feels heavy just scrolling through it on a screen.
And that visual weight is entirely intentional.
You think so?
Oh, definitely. It primes the player for the psychological weight of the mechanics. The game doesn't want you in a casual, beer and pretzels mindset. It wants you to feel like you are unearthing something archaic and dangerous.
Okay, let's unpack this by actually getting our hands dirty.
Yeah.
We need to build a character. So if you're listening to this, just imagine you are sitting at the table with us with a blank sheet in front of you.
All right, so character creation here is stripped down to its barest essentials, which naturally forces you to make hard decisions immediately. You begin with 4 core attributes.
Okay.
They are body, mind, will, and presence.
And that's it.
That's it. And you have exactly 10 points to distribute among them.
Wow, only 10.
Yeah. The baseline for a normal human is 1, and no attribute can start higher than 4.
I noticed that they don't break body down into like strength, dexterity, and constitution like other games do. It's just one blunt instrument. And presence is weighed equally against it. Why divide the human experience into just those 4 specific pillars?
Well, because the mechanics are built to reflect narrative consequence and not tactical combat simulation.
Okay, right.
So body covers all physical interaction with the world. Mind is intellect and pattern recognition. Will is your internal emotional fortification, so like your ability to resist psychic or emotional degradation.
Your mental armor, kind of.
Exactly. And presence is your external weight, like how much gravity you have in a room. And in a game about moral choices, having a high presence is often vastly more dangerous and powerful than being able to just swing a sword.
So for my character, I am going to build someone who relies on that gravity. An investigator type who is observant and persuasive, but maybe lacks raw physical power. So I will allocate 2 points to body, 3 points to mind, 2 points to will, and 3 points to presence.
I like it. That's a very balanced, socially capable foundation. So from there, we move to the skills which are tied directly to those attributes.
Okay.
You have 15 points to spread across the list. So under body, you have fundamentals like athletics and endure.
Makes sense.
Mind governs investigation and lore. Will dictates composure ritual and a highly specific defensive skill called resist shadow.
Ooh, resist shadow.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And then presence covers convince, deceive, intimidate, and empathy. And again, there's a strict ceiling here. No skill can start higher than 3.
Okay, so I want this investigator to be the person who talks their way out of a corner, but who perhaps knows a little too much about the dark underbelly of the world. So out of my 15 points, I am putting 3 into convince, 3 into investigation, and 3 into empathy.
Solid choices.
Yeah, I think so. And then I'll put 2 into ritual, 2 into composure, and the last 2 into endure. Now, after assigning those numbers, I hit a section of the sheet that feels completely foreign compared to rolling up a standard rogue or a paladin or something.
The starting stats.
Yes. The game mandates that every single character, regardless of their backstory, starts with 3 exact core scores. It's wisdom at 1, shadow at 0, and attunance at 0.
Right. So the source text refers to this baseline as the crossroads.
Okay.
And the designers are making a definitive statement here.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't get to start the game as a wise, enlightened sage, and you don't get to start as a corrupted villain. Every character enters the narrative with a clean moral slate and honestly a profound lack of actual wisdom.
It's so interesting because building a character in the system, it feels less like assembling a tactical combat unit and much more like constructing a psychological profile. You aren't rolling up a hero. You are rolling up a deeply flawed person standing at a moral crossroads and just putting up the scaffolding of their mind.
And that psychological scaffolding is the entire point. I mean, it informs the progression system as well.
Right, right.
Because in most games, you kill 10 goblins, you gain experience, you level up. But the rulebook for wisdom explicitly bans that logic.
It says wisdom is earned, never purchased right.
Exactly. You cannot spend arbitrary points to increase your wisdom stat. The mechanics structurally force you to undergo genuine, often painfully real narrative transformation to move that number.
So we have our investigator stats on paper. We are ready to move to the table. But before the first word of the session is even spoken, the game master, whom the rulebook ominously calls the solemn voice.
Yes, the solemn voice.
The solemn voice is doing a bunch of secret prep work that I, as the player, am absolutely forbidden to see.
Yeah, the section detailing this is heavily watermarked GM only. It outlines a mechanic called the Dark Night of the Soul.
Okay.
For every player at the table, the solemn voice must create a hidden secondary character sheet.
Wow.
And it is called the Shade.
Yeah, just the name of that gives me a chill. What is the Shade doing on that secret sheet?
Well, it acts as the mechanical representation of your character's unacknowledged wounds.
Unacknowledged wounds.
Yeah. To build it, the solemn voice reads the backstory you provided and asks 3 foundational questions. What did this person refuse to become? What did they lose and never grieve? And what do they vehemently deny about themselves?
Wow. Okay, so based on those answers, the GM assigns scores from 0 to 10 across 4 specific pillars, right? Grief, longing, terror, and shame.
Exactly. And consider how those pillars map to human psychology. So grief represents the ambient weight of unmourned losses. Longing is the ache for a path that was refused or abandoned. Terror is the shape of your unnamed fears. And shame is the rejected self, like the parts of you that you despise.
I have to push back on this design choice a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, go for it.
Because the GM is taking my character's psychological flaws, assigning numbers to them, and keeping them behind a screen. Are they just weaponizing my own suppressed trauma to use against me in combat?
What's fascinating here is the Shade is entirely non-combative.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it never rolls dice against you, never swings a weapon. Rather than fighting you, it dictates the texture of the world around you. It operates like a localized gravitational field.
Okay, explain how that gravity actually works in play, because I'm struggling to picture it.
Sure, so the solemn voice uses those 4 pillars to subtly warp the encounters you face. Let's say your investigator has a high grease score, perhaps because they abandoned their family to pursue this dangerous career.
Yeah.
The GM ensures that the non-player characters in your vicinity carry an unexpected, heavy sadness. You walk into a tavern and the innkeeper is quietly mourning a lost child. Or the city guard you question looks profoundly existentially tired.
Oh, wow. So if my character has a high shame score, what happens? Do people just point and laugh at me in the street?
No, nothing so overt. With high shame, the solemn voice will orchestrate the narrative, so you constantly find yourself in rooms with NPCs who are highly successful, thriving versions of exactly what you refuse to be.
Oh, that is brutal.
Right, it forces magnetic draw. And high longing means you continuously stumble into situations that offer exactly what you secretly desire, but are too afraid to ask for.
And the GM never tells you they're doing this.
Never. The GM never announces it. The Shade simply operates as a quiet, relentless undercurrent, structuring the world based on the truths you were avoiding.
The world literally becomes a funhouse mirror of what you refuse to look at. That is brilliant and deeply unsettling. So our secret psychological baggage is locked and loaded behind the GM screen. It is time to drop our investigator into the crucible. Our mission today is to simulate a session, so we are going to use one of the starting scenarios provided in the source text. It is titled, fittingly, The Crucible of Truth.
Right. So, to set the stage for you, we are in a dense, politically fractured city. A notoriously corrupt magistrate is about to publicly condemn an innocent family to death to cover up a crime he committed.
The classic setup.
Exactly. And Your investigator has successfully done their job. You have uncovered the exact piece of documentary evidence needed to expose this magistrate, save the family, and end the corruption.
But because this is wisdom the blood price, there is a massive catch. Using this evidence will completely, irrevocably destroy the career and the life of our mentor. The person who took us in off the streets, who taught us how to investigate, who literally fed us when we were starving.
And the tragedy here is that the mentor is actually innocent of the current corruption.
Right. Right.
However, decades ago, they made a single bad deal, a necessary compromise at the time. And that old sin inextricably ties their name to the documentary evidence you just found.
So the stakes are painfully clear. Expose the magistrate, save the innocent family, but ruin the mentor who raised us. Or protect our mentor, bury the evidence, and watch an innocent family hang in the town square. This is a nightmare scenario. There is no right answer.
And the entire architecture of the game is engineered to produce this exact feeling of paralysis.
It's working.
Yeah, there is no clean way out. And this is where the concept of the game master as the solemn voice becomes crucial. The book instructs the GM to present these scenarios without cruelty, but also without a shred of mercy.
So they aren't cheering you on or punishing you.
Exactly. They do not punish you if you choose the mentor, and they do not reward you with bonus points if you save the family. They simply present the truth, enforce the consequences, and hold the space for the tragedy of your choice.
Okay, well, if I'm sitting at the table, I am not going to just sit there paralyzed while the clock ticks down.
What do you do?
I want to find a third option. So I decide to go to my mentor's house in the dead of night. I sit them down by the fire, and I try to convince them to turn themselves in voluntarily, to take the fall for their past crime on their own terms so the family can live.
Man, that is an incredibly high-stakes, emotionally fraught conversation.
Yeah.
So to attempt this, you need to assemble your dice pool. The physical engine of this game uses exclusively 10-sided dice.
Just D10s. Okay.
Yep. You combine the numerical value of your relevant attribute with your relevant skill to determine how many dice you roll.
Well, I'm trying to persuade someone I love to ruin their own life. So that would be my mind attribute, which is 3, plus my convince skill, which is also 3. So I am gathering 6 10-sided dice into my hand. Do I just need to roll higher than the GM, like a contested roll?
Oh, the system doesn't use contested rolls for this. You roll your entire pool of 6 dice against a static target. In this system, every single die that shows a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10 counts as one success.
Got it.
The more successes you accumulate, the better your outcome. If none of the dice show a 7 or higher, you fail the attempt.
But it's not simply a matter of counting the high numbers, is it?
Not at all.
Let's say I roll my 6 dice right now. The numbers come up an 8, a 9, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. So I look at that and see 2 dice that are 7 or higher. I have 2 successes. In a lot of games, that's a solid, clean victory.
In this game, that is a very precarious position because we have to apply the core mechanical philosophy known as the rule of ones.
The rule of ones.
Yes. For every single one you roll in your pool, it actively reaches out and cancels one of your successes.
That is so mean. Why build a subtractive system like that? Why not just use a standard 20-sided die where I pass or fail based on a single number?
Well, the math is designed to mirror the thematic entropy of the world. A standard pass-fail system is binary. But a subtractive dice pool means that your own flaws, your own missteps, actively drag down your victories.
Ah, I see.
The 1 represents human error, hesitation, or just the chaotic resistance of the universe. So in your roll, that single 1 eats your 8. You are left with only 1 net success.
Yeah.
Your solid victory devolves into a scenario where you merely scrape by.
So I get 1 net success. I barely accomplish the task of making my mentor listen. But let's look at the darker side of the math. What happens if I roll my 6 dice? I get absolutely no successes, so nothing above a 6, but I do roll a 1. I have a negative net outcome.
Oh, yeah. The rule book classifies that specific outcome as a complication.
That sounds bad.
It is. When you roll 0 net successes, but a 1 is sitting on the table, the situation doesn't just result in failure. It wildly escalates. A complication is never just a stutter or a polite refusal from the NPC.
What does that look like narratively in our scene? If I roll a complication while begging my mentor to turn themselves in?
In a complication, you might actually achieve exactly what you set out to do, but in the most catastrophic way possible.
Oh, boy.
Right? So you passionately convince the mentor that the magistrate must be stopped and that they must take responsibility. The mentor agrees with you entirely, but consumed by a sudden overwhelming wave of guilt and self-destructive rage, they refuse to go to the authorities. Instead, they grab a hunting knife from the mantel and sprint out into the night to violently assassinate the magistrate in his bed, knowing they will be slaughtered by the guards in the process. You convince them, but your words escalated the tragedy into a bloodbath.
I would be staring at the table in absolute horror. Okay, let's back away from the complication. Let's say I rolled well, I got 2 net successes. Does the mentor just burst into tears and immediately agree to go to the city watch?
No. And this is where the game prevents players from treating conversation like mind control. The mechanics utilize a social conflict track. You cannot fundamentally alter a deeply entrenched human being's core survival instincts with a single lucky roll of the dice. Social influence exists on a rigid track from 1 to 5.
Okay, break that track down for me.
Position 1 is resistant. The NPC's worldview is hardened against your suggestion. Position 2 is neutral, so they are no longer hostile, but they are unconvinced. Position 3 is engaged, meaning they are actively wrestling with your point. Position 4 is persuaded. And position 5 is committed, meaning they will act on your suggestion even if it brings them immense personal harm.
So my mentor starts at 1 resistant because I am literally asking them to destroy their reputation and face imprisonment. When I roll my dice and get those 2 net successes, what happens?
Each net success you roll moves the NPC exactly 1 step along the track. Your 2 successes move the mentor from resistant through neutral up to engaged.
So they are sitting by the fire, staring at the flames, actively wrestling with the guilt of what I've just asked them to do, but they aren't turning themselves in yet.
Precisely. They hear you. They haven't thrown you out of their house. But to push someone all the way to committed in a single conversation requires 4 or more net successes, which mathematically with your dice pool is incredibly rare. The game forces you to realize that real paradigm-shifting social change takes time across multiple scenes.
But as a player, I don't have time. The clock is ticking, dawn is approaching, and the innocent family is going to hang in the morning. My mentor is just sitting there, engaged but paralyzed. The normal tools of conversation have failed me. You know, a standard game, this is where I would draw my sword. But in this universe, desperation pushes you toward a much more dangerous threshold. I want to cheat the dilemma. I want to use magic.
Okay, this brings us to the core metaphysical engine of wisdom, the blood price. The magic system is heavily rooted in a very specific, real-world mystical framework, the Kabbalistic tree of life, consisting of 10 emanations called the Sephirot.
The book is very careful to clarify this, though. It explicitly notes that this isn't theology, it's architecture. Why did the designers choose this specific mystical map for their magic system?
Well, because Kabbalah at its core is about the structure of reality. The Sephirot map, how pure divine intent filters down through various concepts like justice, mercy, splendor, and foundation until it solidifies into the physical world. The game uses this map to represent the powers of light and order. By tapping into a Sephira, you are essentially catching the universe's code before it completely solidifies and attempting to rewrite it.
Let's see how that works in our crucible. I want to bypass this frustrating social conflict track. Let's look at the Sephira of Had, which translates to splendor or majesty. The book says every Sephira offers 2 distinct paths of power. The lightning flash, which is fast top-down and overwhelming, and the Teshuvah, which is an ascending path, slower, reflective, and much harder to access.
Right, so if you are in a rush to save the family, you would look at the lightning flash of Had. This power is called eloquence.
It says here that eloquence allows my words to carry the cosmic weight of absolute authority. I can speak with such perfect, radiant clarity that even my bitterest enemies are forced to pause and submit. I could unleash that on my mentor right now, entirely bypass the social track, and compel them to march down to the guards and confess.
You absolutely could. The magic would force compliance. Alternatively, if you had more time, you could attempt the ascending path, the Teshuvah of Had, known as unraveling.
How does that one work?
This power doesn't force anyone to do anything. Instead, it allows your mind to detect the underlying mechanism of any deception currently in play in the world. You could use it to meticulously analyze the magistrate's evidence, seeking a hidden flaw that might break the corruption without burning your mentor's reputation.
Oh man. The problem with the Teshuvah path is the prerequisite, though. It requires a significantly higher wisdom score to use reliably, and my investigator only has a wisdom of 1. The lightning flash of eloquence is much easier. But let's be entirely honest. Even forcing my mentor to confess with magic still means my mentor gets ruined. I want a darker option. I am tired of this moral agonizing. I want to save the mentor and save the family. What if I just sneak over to the corrupt magistrate's estate, slip past the guards, and violently eliminate him in his sleep? The problem instantly vanishes.
The eternal allure of the blade.
Right.
It's fast, it's decisive, and it feels like a solution. But the game anticipates this exact player instinct. It governs this through strict rules we can call the shadow economy. Violence and wisdom. The blood price is never a clean, consequence-free physics calculation. It is inherently ugly, and it is spiritually expensive.
So if I slit the magistrate's throat to solve this complex political problem, what happens to my character sheet?
If you utilize lethal violence in a situation where a non-violent option was clearly available to you, you immediately gain +1 shadow.
Okay.
Furthermore, if you kill a target when you had the tactical opportunity to simply subdue them, you gain an additional +1 shadow.
Let's talk about what shadow actually is, because a lot of games have a morality meter, where if you do bad things, your evil bar fills up and your eyes glow red. That isn't what is happening here, is it?
Not at all. Treating shadow as an evil meter fundamentally misunderstands the game. Shadow is the accumulated psychic weight of everything you leave unacknowledged.
Unacknowledged.
Yeah. Every compromise you swallow, every shortcut you rationalize, every act of violence you justify for the greater good. You are not necessarily an evil person for assassinating a corrupt magistrate to save a family, but the sheer weight of taking a human life to avoid a difficult conversation clouds your spiritual judgment.
And as that shadow accumulates, as I take more and more shortcuts, I unlock the dark mirror image of the Tree of Life.
Yes, the Qliphoth, the husks of light, the powers of darkness.
The lore here says that the Qliphoth are what power becomes when it is violently severed from its divine source. It is brilliant, consuming, and entirely empty. And I love this line from the text. It says, characters do not seek the Qliphoth. The Qliphoth find characters who have stopped seeking themselves.
It is a profound mechanic. So your shadow has gone up because you rationalized murdering the magistrate. Perhaps you also lied to your mentor about where you were that night. More shadow. Now the darker powers begin to whisper to you. Let's rewind the scenario. Let's say you didn't kill the magistrate. You are still sitting with your paralyzed mentor. You decide to bypass the Sephiroth of Light entirely and invoke Qliphothic magic to solve the crucible.
Okay, let's look at the shell corresponding to understanding, which is Setherial, known as the concealment. The powers here sound incredibly potent. The primary mode of Setherial is called breaking. It allows the user to completely metaphysically erase one objective truth from the world for the duration of a scene. I could cast this and erase the documentary evidence entirely. The physical paper rots, the memories of it fade. The magistrate suddenly has no proof, the innocent family goes free, and my mentor's past sin is buried forever.
It sounds like the perfect bloodless victory. You saved everyone without swinging a sword.
Yeah, but I know there is a catch. The Qliphoth never give power without extracting a toll.
Right. The toll isn't just mechanical. It is deeply narrative. Every Qliphothic power has a secondary aspect called the binding. If you use Ethereal to erase the truth, it requires you to crystallize someone's grief into an inescapable permanent condition.
Oh, jeez.
The loss they carry becomes structurally load-bearing for their soul.
Wait, let me understand this. If I use Sethariel to hide the corrupt evidence and save my mentor from prison, they are physically safe from the law. But the binding means they are permanently, inescapably crushed by the spiritual guilt of knowing what they did and knowing that I shattered reality itself just to hide it.
Yes. They can never move past it. They can never process it or heal from it. The sorrow becomes a permanent fixture of their being. You saved their physical life, but you irrevocably destroyed their spirit. Neither the Qliphothic paths, the breaking or the binding, offers illumination or healing. They only leave deep psychological scars that do not fade.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This system of corruption and consequence isn't just a number you track openly on your character sheet with a pencil. There is a hidden underlying current in this game called attunance.
I would argue that attunance is the most radical, boundary-pushing design choice in the entire rulebook. Yeah. Attunance is a sliding scale that goes from -5, which represents being fully steeped in the Qliphothic darkness, up to +5, which represents being perfectly aligned with the Sephirothic light. This score dictates which types of magic come easier to you and how the fabric of reality responds to your presence.
And as a player, I am never allowed to know my score.
Never. The player never sees the number. The Game Master tracks your attunance secretly behind the screen. It fluctuates quietly based on every choice you make. If you voluntarily use a Qliphothic power to erase evidence, your attunance drops. If you lie to an NPC to avoid making amends, it drops. If you deliberately choose the harder, slower ascending path of magic when a violent shortcut was available, it rises.
The rulebook is incredibly strict on this point, too. It instructs the GM, never tell the player their attunance, never describe attunance by name in play. I only ever feel its secondary effects. So it's like having a credit score for your soul, but the universe refuses to let you download the app to check it. You only realize you are spiritually bankrupt when your card declines.
That is a perfect analogy. The GM might describe your magic by saying,
Hmm.
the ritual to invoke the shadows and hide the truth comes to you easily, almost too easily, like slipping into cold water. Or, if you try to use the power of light while in the negative, they might say, the path to heal this wound feels heavy, like you are trying to push against a rising tide.
Wow.
It breeds this brilliant, pervasive sense of paranoia and self-reflection in the player. You truly don't know how far you've fallen. You only feel the dark magic getting smoother and the light magic getting heavier. You're being silently, gently pulled toward the Keylothoth.
Let's escalate our crucible to the absolute breaking point. Let's say I played poorly. I lied to my mentor, I assassinated the magistrate's guards, I accumulated massive amounts of shadow, and my hidden attunements plummeted into the deep negatives. I am backed into an absolute inescapable corner. The magistrate has rallied his forces, my mentor is doomed, the family is on the scaffold, and the city watch is kicking down my door. I need a nuclear option.
Well, the designers anticipated the moment of absolute player desperation. They provided an ultimate mechanic for exactly this scenario. It is called the Rule of Fate.
I love the physical, tactile ritual of how this is implemented. Once per scene, a player can take a physical token, a heavy coin, a distinctive stone, something with weight, drop it onto the center of the table, and declare to the entire room, it is fated that.
And whatever words follow that phrase, bypass the dice, bypass the GM, and become absolute, undeniable narrative truth.
But the game places strict parameters on it. It has to be a single, unbroken sentence. And crucially, it can only shape the future, never the past. I cannot drop the coin and say, it is fated that my mentor never made that corrupt deal 30 years ago.
Correct. The game refuses to let you erase the foundation of the tragedy. You cannot undo what is established. But you could drop the heavy token onto the wood of the table and declare it is fated that the absolute truth of this corruption comes to light before the executioner pulls the lever.
Which means the truth will inevitably be revealed. But I surrender all control over exactly how it happens or who gets caught in the blast radius when it does.
Exactly. It is a tremendous reality warping power, but it is an incredibly blunt instrument. And utilizing it brings us to the terrifying caveat built into the endgame of this system.
Okay, what's that?
If your character has consistently given themselves over to the dark shortcuts, if you have continually relied on Klefothic powers, if your shadows reach 15 or higher, and your hidden attunements is sitting in the negative tower, dropping that fate token risks triggering the breaking point.
The text calls it the Klefothic emergence.
Yes. This is the moment the bill finally comes due. At the breaking point, the solemn voice takes that secret shade character sheet, the one built from your grief-longing terror and shame, which has been subtly messing with your world all campaign, and they literally manifest it into the physical fiction of the game. It steps out of the subtext and becomes a tangible narrative force.
That's terrifying.
It might appear as a physical doppelganger standing in a shattered mirror, or a vividly lucid hallucination during a waking dream.
It is the literal physical manifestation of all my suppressed trauma, my lies, and my terrible choices coming home to roost. If I'm the player, my first instinct is to draw my weapon. Does it attack me? Do I roll for initiative and fight my own shadow in tactical combat?
No, because that would let you off the hook. A physical fight is easy. The emergence does not attack you with swords or fire. It steps out of the dark and it offers you a choice. It reflects the exact path you have continually refused to face.
Yeah.
And how you respond to that offer determines the ultimate fate of your character.
If I am standing face to face with my shame and my grief and I accept its offer, what happens?
If you lean into the darkness, if you still refuse to integrate your trauma and acknowledge your flaws, the character becomes permanently corrupted. They fall to the Qliphoth, they're removed from your control, and likely become a terrifying antagonist for the rest of the campaign. But if you use that terrifying moment to finally agonizingly take responsibility, if you acknowledge the truth of your wounds and integrate them, you can pull yourself back from the brink. You immediately reduce your shadow score, and the GM permanently reduces the numerical stats of your shade.
Which perfectly brings us to the core philosophy of how a player actually wins a session of Wisdom the Blood Price. We talked earlier about how you don't level up by killing monsters. You don't get experience points for assassinating the magistrate. You certainly don't get wisdom by using cool reality warping magic to cheat a dilemma.
Not at all. Standard experience points in this game might buy you slightly better mundane skills, like getting a little better at athletics. But the wisdom attribute is the true overarching measure of a character's advancement. And the solemn voice is instructed to only award a single point of wisdom for incredibly specific, painful narrative breakthroughs.
Break down exactly what I have to do to earn that point.
The GM will award you +1 wisdom if you willingly accept a genuine narrative loss rather than fighting it or cheating it. Or if you look someone in the eye and take honest, unmitigated responsibility for the harm you caused them. Or if you are offered a path of significant game-changing power and you refuse it at a real tangible cost to your own safety.
So, returning to our crucible one last time. If I put away the magic and I put away the blade, if I sit with my mentor and I let them turn themselves in, if I stand by them in the courtroom and we both accept the utter ruin of their reputation in order to save the innocent family, I gain wisdom.
Yes, because you faced the absolute worst of the dilemma. You paid the terrible price it demanded, and you saw the truth of the situation clearly without trying to mask it with violence or reality-warping magic. You didn't win a fight. You earned insight.
Okay, let's pull back from the table. So what does this all mean? We have spent the last half hour exploring this beautiful, dark, profoundly intimidating rulebook. It is abundantly clear that this is not just a game about pretending to be elves and wizards. It is a literal moral engine. It mathematically tracks the weight of our choices through hidden currents. We talked extensively about attunements, but there is also a mechanic called resonance, which dictates how the universe subtly reacts to you.
Right.
If your resonance drops because of your actions, animals will instinctively avoid you. Strangers will distrust you on first sight, and complex mechanical objects will simply malfunction in your hands. The world itself begins to resist your presence.
The brilliance of the design is how it mechanically punishes the easy way out.
Okay.
It looks directly at typical tabletop RPG behavior. The impulse to be a murder hobo, the instinct to casually lie to NPCs to get better prices, the urge to steal everything that isn't nailed down, and the game says, fine, you have free will. You can absolutely do all of those things.
Yeah.
But the universe is keeping a ledger, and eventually your soul will rot. It actively rewards the painful, slow, unglamorous process of self-reflection.
It really holds a mirror up, doesn't it? Because as you explain the mechanics, I can't help but think about how perfectly it maps to reality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes. The mechanics of wisdom operate as an incredibly potent structural metaphor for how we process our own real-world choices.
How so?
Consider the concept of the shade. We all have one. Every single person has an invisible character sheet walking behind them, built from our own unmourned grief, our unexpressed longing, our unnamed terror, and our deeply denied shame. And just like the GM uses those pillars to warp the game world, our real-world shade subtly but constantly affects how we interact with the people around us.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Think about it. If you harbor unacknowledged shame, don't you find yourself strangely, irrationally resentful of people who succeed in the exact areas where you gave up? If you carry unwanted grief, doesn't it quietly bleed into how defensively you treat your current relationships?
The game isn't inventing a new psychology. It is simply taking the quiet subtext of the human condition and rendering it as literal mechanical text.
Exactly. Every day, we are all navigating the tension between the easy descending path of cutting corners, the lightning flash, the Kowalski shortcuts, and the much harder, much slower ascending path of taking genuine responsibility to teshuva.
Which brings me to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on today. We started this dive by talking about dice, about how we want our roles in games to represent clean, consequence-free physics. But this game forces us to acknowledge that every single action leaves a receipt. So taking this entirely outside of the fantasy world and entirely outside of the game, think about your own life right now. Think about the small shortcuts you've taken this year, the difficult, messy conversations you've managed to dodge, the uncomfortable truths you've successfully managed to conceal from your friends or from yourself. If there was a solemn voice, a hidden game master sitting behind a screen just out of sight, silently adjusting your personal attunement score based not on what you intended to do, but on the actual silent receipts of your actions, what would your score be today?
That is a question that requires real bravery to answer.
Between the lightning and the dark. Thanks for taking the deep dive. We'll see you next time.